10 minutes on the dot. You're just in time for News Check this morning. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for being loyal and choosing KBC Channel 1. In case you're just joining us, this is News Check, a platform that gives you an opportunity to interact with experts drawn from different fields as we sink into some of the issues that have been shaping the news in the country. And right now, as we're having this conversation, what has been sort of a hot topic in the country is the BBI report that was unveiled last week. And of course, there has been quite a number of talks as to what should be the way forward when it comes to the adoption of this particular report. Yesterday and for the last 2 days, about 300 members of parliament, including senators and members of the National Assembly, had a retreat in Naivasha to discuss the BBI report and what should be implemented in terms of its adoption. And what came out at the climax of this particular retreat is that about 300 members of parliament agreed that they're going to pass this bill without making any further amendments. Now, that has raised further questions as to what then does it mean for what was initially meant to be a national dialogue. We are going to be having that conversation, plus some of the proposals contained in the BBI report and what opposing voices have to say when it comes to this particular report that was meant to bring a new dawn to Kenya. So it's a conversation that involves you and I. Welcome on board. As we begin straight away, I will be taking you through how you can be part of the conversation in a bit. My name is Serfine Achieng Ouma, and our sign language interpreter is Byron Abuli. I will also be telling you who I'm having in studio. It's a panel that will cut across to touch on all the issues that are important when it comes to the BBI report. But for now, let's just have a glimpse at the reporter's diary for you to know what we are also tracking for you. So those are some of the activities that our reporters are out and about tracking for you this particular morning in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, and in other parts of the country as well. So in between this particular broadcast, we will be taking you to the live proceedings of this particular event. So stay with us as we kickstart the conversation. At Serfine_Achieng is where you find me on Twitter, Serfine Achieng on Facebook, and you can also use our official social media handles at KBC Channel 1. Share your thoughts, any questions you have with regards to the conversation, and we will appreciate that. Plus, we are streaming this live for you. In case you're leaving the house, then you can continue following in on the conversation online at KBC Channel 1 and on YouTube at KBC Channel 1 as well. So right now, let me bring in my guest for the conversation in studio this morning. I'm hosting Michael Agwanda. He's a political analyst and a governance expert. Thank you so much, sir, for creating time for us.
My pleasure.
All right. We are also expecting Mheshimiwa John Mutunga, the Member of Parliament for Tigania West, to also give us his perspective on some of the issues that are emanating from the BBI report. That should be happening later. But right now, let's begin straight away. Michael, there has been a lot of talks that have been taking center stage since the BBI report was unveiled last week. First of all, I'd like to begin from your sentiments. What do you read from the retreat that was concluded in Naivasha just the other day? There has been reservations with regards to who was invited and who was not invited, what issues were discussed, and some were left out in the conversation. What do you read from these mixed, reactions?
Serfine, it's a great pleasure to be here today, and so are the viewers. Let me start by saying that last Monday, when there was a BBI launch at the Bomas of Kenya, it didn't look like the launch was done at all. We were expecting a huge, speech from the president, and we were told that there was a written speech from the president. We're expecting that to be read. We didn't see, tape being cut or a cake being cut for that reason, to show that now officially the BBI has been launched. I think there were some other issues that perhaps did not make it so clear. However, the team that was invited with one mandate to give the support to the BBI document. That was done properly well. But looking at what happened yesterday in Naivasha, you could see that the ground has already been created. The support of the two principals, that is Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, the President of Kenya, and Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, the opposition leader, are standing there and having the minority leader in the Senate, Honorable Rengo, reading the unanimously agreed, position of all, the majority of the senators as well as members of parliament, was a clear sign that indeed the roadmap has now been made, and the decisions by the authority, elected authority, and the representative of both the Senate and the National Assembly unanimously agreeing. I will say unanimously, because when you're talking about 300 plus elected leaders, then the rest, a minority, unanimously agreeing that they will, push forward the BBI to the electorate to decide on the fate of the BBI. That in itself is a unanimous endorsement of BBI the way it is, and it closes on anybody who wants to do any amendment.
So how then do you, explain or interpret the calls for a national dialogue? I remember the ODM leader Raila Odinga, when he was in Kisii, when they were talking about BBI issues, he sort of mentioned that this is something that is not cast in stone, that there is going to be a national engagement on the issues that pertain the BBI report. So when you say that it's sort of like the ground has been marked, it's like a decision is already, you can actually see where this is going, where then does this leave the room for national dialogue on the BBI report?
I think national dialogue is very, very important. But the fundamental question that everybody is going to ask is, these people that are calling for national dialogue, where were they before? And are they calling for national dialogue with a clear motive, or they want their way, and if it's not their way, the highway? That's a fundamental question that people are asking, because the very people that are calling for national dialogue are actually within government, majority of them, including the deputy president. I mean, why do you want to call a national dialogue on a process that has already been going on, for the last 2 years? And you've been part and parcel of it. In fact, if you look at what the president said, we said, ask him if I've not been briefing him. And now it's coming out that he was even part of the process that selected the secretariat and the commissioners, the committee members that were sitting at the BBI, And if he did to that extent, why couldn't he push his agenda while the BBI was still collecting information? The main reason why they are saying that this thing is now what it is or never is because if you change anything, somebody will go to court and will say you did not have public participation on this document. Who gave you the authority to change something that already had gone to the people, and the people decided that this is what they wanted? Now, if you subject the BBI into any changes for now, then somebody will take you to court, and if he takes you to court, the process goes back to square one. And I don't think that's what the president or the former prime minister want in this document. It's taken over 2 years, and I think they're thinking this is the time. Remember that when the BBI first was released on Bomas, they said that there were still few things that needed to be looked into, and so the committee was given time to go and hear from the people again. That was the time when the national dialogue needed to have been initiated. And if somebody had an issue with the BBI at that particular time, they had an opportunity. In fact, I had an opportunity because I was representing, hired to do some work for a certain agency, and we appeared before the committee at LICO, and we presented our case there. Now, what they needed to have come out to say is, indeed, we presented our thoughts, but they were not captured. But nobody is saying that. Everybody seems to be saying there should be a national dialogue. How many times do you need to have a national dialogue to come up with a document?
But we are talking about a quest for unity, for a country to speak in one voice, for us to actually agree to disagree. Does it mean that we cannot reach a consensus? Does it mean that the concerns being raised by the opposing voices are not valid?
They are very valid. The questions being asked are very valid. They are talking about the imperial presidency of that is proposed in the document. They're talking about positions like the ombudsman in the judiciary that is to be appointed by the president. They're talking about national ethos. They're talking about distribution of wealth and many other things. These are things that need to be discussed on the table. However, the question is, when these things were being discussed on the table, where were these people? Were they waiting until the document is out is when they can raise the issue? That is where the mismatch is. That's where the dishonesty part of it is. That is where we would think that perhaps it is because they want to raise these issues and knowing very well the process that BBI has taken. Let me tell you, some of these people are very, very smart and they know the loopholes in the law. They know for sure that if they subject it to any change, it will only drag it to a point where, remember that election is just about 2 years away from today. And they know that if they subject this thing to any further delay, then it will not happen. They may want to have, no changes of the constitution just before the election. And perhaps that's a reason. Another reason why they could be calling for this thing is perhaps not in a clear mind that they want change, but because they think that if you do not agree with our way of thinking, then we are going to oppose. And I want to tell you this, Serfine. There is no document in the world that will never be opposed. There are people who will oppose it whether you like it or not. People disagree within the family members. In fact, spouses disagree on very, very flimsy reasons for that reason. And therefore, you do not expect this document to sail through without any opposition. Because it is through opposition in this country that you create a name.
So this talk about us having a non-contested referendum, is it even a reality? But you'll answer me that question in a bit. Let me also bring in our viewers into the conversation. This morning, our viewpoint question we are asking you, because we want you to also add your voice in the conversation we are having in studio. So we are asking you this morning on our viewpoint question, should leaders engage on consensus building over the BBI report? Should leaders engage on consensus building over the BBI report? What do you think? Should they engage on consensus building over the BBI report? Or you feel it's too late? Is it time? What do you think? We invite your views as we continue having this conversation in studio this morning. I'm privileged to be hosting Michael Agwanda, a political analyst. So Michael, as we continue, engaging on this particular subject, I want us to also look at when the BBI report was being unveiled, something that among all the issues that stood out for me was the fact that there were calls for, if possible, let's have a non-contested referendum. And for me, I feel for us to have that, then at least we have to have all the voices on the table and reach a middle ground on the issues that pertain to the BBI report. If we are suggesting this morning that the door is locked for any further discussions on the BBI report, then what do we essentially mean?
I think there's great dishonesty on people that are alleging that we need to have a non-contested document. I say that with great authority, knowing that these people that are subjecting this to sort of a battle or a disagreement are working within the government, headed by none other than the Deputy President. I would wish that they reach out to him if they want this to succeed. They know him, he's serving in the government, they are in talking terms with that
by
individual.
They, you mean who?
I believe the authorities, whether it is the deputy, whether it's the president or the former prime minister, if they want a non-contested document of the BBI, then they will reach out to the deputy president, because it's very, very clear. Though lately we've had the deputy president breathing, hot and cold at the same time. I think he said he's perhaps, in a position to have an agreement, on this, so that it may not have any contestation. But he has not come very clear. What is very clear is when you hear certain people around him speak and says, we will oppose this, then we know the deputy president is in it. Because when he doesn't come out and say, and say that indeed, we are seeking an alternative agreement on this so that we do not have a contestation on this matter, then you know for sure that it's just buying time. When this thing goes to the people, for now, you ask a very fundamental question, whether there is no any other way to have a national discussion on this matter. I can tell you for free that once the President and Prime Minister said this thing is going forward, you can hear from the papers today and from people who were privy to the discussions that took place. They are out there. They are, in fact, today they are launching the committee that is going to spearhead the process of initiating these changes into a referendum by June. They've already laid a schedule and time frame on how they want this thing to be done. Once the process of picking 1 million signatures begins, as they put it, before December, I can tell you there is no retracting, there is no any further discussion on this matter. However, I can also say that there was a bit of push and pull from the parliamentarians, and there was a bit and pull from the Senate as well. The Senate wanted to be recognized as the upper house. Actually, they delved into that discussion while they were in Mombasa. The parliamentarians wanted CDF to be entrenched into the law, and they said that there's a leeway for that to happen. But perhaps that is as far they can go. Remember that once they know for a fact that this thing will be subjected to the Senate, it will be subjected to a hearing in Parliament, it will be subjected to a hearing in the county assemblies, and as a result, you probably want to give them just a little age on what they want so that it's passed seamlessly. And I believe that is why you saw the tone, that is why you saw the excitement among the members of Parliament, whether in the Senate or in Parliament, coming out and to say that they're supporting this. And another thing that perhaps was not very, very clear in the past among the elected leaders is they did not understand some of the things that are in the BBI. And I can strongly believe, tell you with great authority, that some of them perhaps did not read the BBI in totality. And so, they were taken through some of those contentious issues that what they were asking, and they thought that it was now, something that they could push for.
So if I get you correctly, the Naivasha retreat provided that opportunity for an in-depth, analysis of the BBI report and gave the members of Parliament a chance to understand the critical issues about the report?
Correct. That's exactly what happened.
All right. So having said that, let's desist from just looking at the opposing voices as Deputy President William Ruto and probably his allies. Let's look at there could be Kenyans who are also having reservations with regards to this BBI report, and their issues could be going with what the Deputy President William Ruto is saying or not, but they also have their own issues that may or may not, give them a chance to have a clear-cut decision on whether they support the BBI report or not. So if we say that there is no time for us to allow other opinions, other ideas on the table, where do we leave these Kenyans? And post the adoption of this BBI report, how are we then going to justify the unity that we seek, the walking towards a similar direction?
This is something that the government must do. The government must print BBI in local languages so that everybody is able to read and understand for themselves. What we are having today is what they're hearing from the Deputy President, what they're hearing from the Prime Minister, what they're hearing from the President himself, and other leaders who are talking about BBI, on the perception that they've read the BBI. It is not possible to have a unanimous agreement in a country like our country, which is highly politicized, if they've not read the document and reason with it. For now, I am 100% sure that maybe 3/4 of our country, maybe even more, have not even seen the BBI document itself.
3/4?
Yes. They've not even seen the BBI book itself.
We are talking about adoption.
So I really think that we need to have the BBI discussion on our media. TV is doing a great deal, but how many people are able to watch TV? I really think that radio need to have a lot of this discussion on BBI point by point and point by point. And KBC and Radio Mayenga and many other, KBC stations perhaps need to take a lead, because this is a government agency, so that they can discuss to people every inch of the BBI that is there. That has not been done. And I think it is important for that to be done. I really think that it's...
In the interest of fairness, it's being done right now. We are having a show just to...
Yeah, we're having a show.
Open this conversation
I agree. However, we're not going point by point on some of the contentious issues that perhaps people have not understood. Some of the things that people want to know is the governance aspect of it. They want to know how the president is going to appoint, the prime minister and the deputy prime minister, and how he's going to appoint the ombudsman, how he's going to, appoint, cabinet ministers, in parliament, and outside as well, as provided in the BBI. That they have not understood. And they also want to know whether this president will be a man that can appoint all his relatives in this position. And if not, then those are the things that need to be, explained to the people. And I think it is important to engage Kenyans on exactly what they've understood to be one of the best things. I think I was in a meeting where this was being discussed, and you will see that these are highly learned people, but they were still asking fundamental questions. So an ordinary Kenyan also needs to be able to understand, and I think that should be the role of the government. And they need to print it in people's native language so that they can read, be explained for if they're not able to understand, so that we are in unity. However, I think time is running too fast, and perhaps that might not be the dream of the people who are moving the BBI.
I'm really concerned about why we are talking about time when it comes to discussions that revolve around a document that ought to bring a solution, not just for this generation, but generations to come. What happened to patience and getting the right thing for what will solve the problem that we are facing right now as a country and the future? But then again, we will be picking up on that conversation just in a bit. But right now we want to follow up on something that is happening right here in Nairobi. The Central Bank of Kenya governor is currently making an address. Let's just listen into what he's saying.
Of course, today I also met the ambassador for Italy and the ambassador for France, who are also instrumental in this journey, and thank you again for being here. So as the world builds back from coronavirus, climate change and more broadly sustainability will be at the center. And I think, Wanjira, you are quite eloquent about this. I think we are delighted that Wangari Maathai left us not just the forest, but left us you. So thank you very much for that, to remind us of this. The focus on sustainability is quite urgent in Africa. Climate change in particular continues to wreak havoc on African economies. The effect of drought, flooding, and other natural disasters have been catastrophic across Africa. The irony is that Africa contributes the least to greenhouse emissions. Yet, in terms of the burden from these emissions, it bears the greatest burden globally. For Kenya and other African countries, the time is now to build a truly sustainable financial system that works for and with the people. Ultimately, like as I have emphasized again and again, ultimately, all financing should be green. And I was struck by the boiling frog thing. I've always wondered about that, because I thought it was a boy kind of thing. Boys talk about boiling frogs. And now Vera is talking about boiling frogs. I think we have a new thing. Yeah. But I thought of, when I was listening to this, I thought of another story that I wanted to tell you. And a few years ago, I happened to be in an EAC gathering. And next to me was an old minister from Uganda. And we kind of struck conversation and so forth. And at one point, it's a long story, but at one point he told me, I traveled to a particular place and I saw this gentleman planting coconuts. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever seen anybody plant coconuts. I doubt you have. Coconuts are always there. They're just coconuts, you know. It's like a baobab trees, you know. I mean, who has ever planted a baobab tree? So he talked about seeing somebody planting coconuts. So he talked to the gentleman and asked him, hey, so I see you're planting coconuts. I hope you know that it takes a long time for the coconuts to grow. And so this person who was the Ugandan minister then tells me, this man turned to me and said, I eat from this coconut tree here that I never planted. I know that I'm planting these coconut trees and I will not eat from them. Then the minister turned to me with a lesson. Society is at its best when we plant coconuts, when we know for sure we will not eat from those coconuts. That's a lesson for us today. What we are doing today, we are benefiting from the coconuts that Wangari Maathai and others planted. They never saw what we see every day. We, on the other hand, have to plant coconuts today with the COP26 and other initiatives, all the climate and sustainability initiatives, knowing fully well that we will probably not fully benefit from it. But society, in the main, will benefit from it. And this is the vision of the Central Bank of Kenya for banking, for the banking sector. The vision was coined based on the need to promote sustainable banking business, and it is hinged on 4 pillars: customer centricity, risk-based credit pricing, transparency, and ethical banking. All the 4 pillars have a direct link to sustainable finance, and they are being operationalized through the Kenya Banking Sector Charter issued in February of 2019. So far, Kenyan banks have made good progress in implementing the charter as we make the move to a sustainable financial system. Other sustainable finance initiatives in Kenya include the Kenya Bankers Association launched the Sustainable Finance Initiative in December of 2015, and all banks are actually part of that sustainable finance initiative. It is aimed at raising awareness on environmental, social, and governance risks and financing within the banking sector. It also provides an e-learning platform to guide the adoption of sustainable finance practices in Kenya's banking industry.
All right, that is the Central Bank of Kenya Governor Patrick Njoroge currently speaking at the launch of the Year of Action of Climate Change. The launch of the Year of Climate Change Action, I beg your pardon, and it's currently happening at Karura Forest. It is an event that is being spearheaded by the British High Commissioner to Kenya, Madame Jane Marriott. And what is happening is the fact that the UK is actually gearing towards hosting the COP26 in Glasgow in November 2021. So what is going to be happening in the next 12 months is that the UK-Kenya partnership is going to be celebrating the leadership that Kenya has shown in areas such as climate policy, clean energy, and green finance. So it's an event that is currently ongoing. Later on, I understand there is an expectation of the Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Keriako Tobiko, who will be making an address together with the British High Commissioner herself, Madame Jane Marriott. We'll be going back there as soon as that happens so that we also get to hear what they have to say at this particular event. Now, in studio, we are talking about matters BBI, and it's coming at a time when there was that conclusion of a 2-day retreat in Naivasha, where about 300 members of parliament drawn from both Senate and the National Assembly unanimously agreed to chart the way forward on taking the BBI report to the public as, preparations for its endorsement and adoption are underway. So we are just discussing conversations that have emanated from this decision to have the retreat and even to have adoption of the report minus any further amendments, and what reactions this has emanated. And later we'll also be talking about some of the proposals that are contained in the BBI report and how they seek to change your life and my life as well. So join us in the conversation. Remember, we are asking you also on our viewpoint question this morning, should leaders engage on consensus building over the BBI report? Should leaders engage on consensus building over the BBI report? That's the question that is driving our conversation this morning. We want you to share your views. Should leaders engage on consensus building over the BBI report? Is it time? Is it time for us to do that as a country? That's what we're asking you. So share your thoughts with us at KBC Channel 1 at Serfine_Achieng. And of course, I'll share that as we continue with the conversation. So Michael, before we, shifted gears to follow up on that particular function, we were talking about, how the views of Kenyans ought to be represented in this particular process. And quite fundamentally, you mentioned something about who should be a leader and how they should guide conversations that are important, such as what we're having now, BBI. And I want you to talk to me about what you feel with regards to, if you look at the electorate vis-a-vis who they elect, who do you think carries the power to influence such decisions? And in our case, is that what is happening on the ground, or it's vice versa?
When the leaders were in Naivasha, not just ordinary non-elected leaders were invited in that summit. It was members of parliament, and it was members of the Senate, and perhaps some few technocrats to take them through the document, the BBI document, so that they could have a better understanding of what the document says. These leaders are representation of the electorates. They're the leaders that are serving our interests, and they're the interests of the electorates from every corner of this country. They're in Parliament and in the Senate. If we wanted to understand and have a serious dialogue from common mwananchi, we delegated the responsibility of collecting that information and bringing it to us, to our elected leaders. Unfortunately, in this country, is majority of people that are elected are not elected on the basis of the interests of the electorates, but on the basis and in the interests of their godfathers for that reason. And therefore, they are in Naivasha for a conference for one reason or the other. When they leave that place, the only thing they will say is, we want the BBI to be, passed. We want the BBI to be supported. We want the BBI to change the way we are thinking and the way we are governed. But they don't go into the details of what the BBI says. Look at our parliamentarians. All they go to, on funerals and in functions, all they're saying is we support. A number of them are saying we support the BBI, but they never tell people why they support the BBI. I think it is high time that we look into our electorates, and it is high time our leaders also look at a document like this and go through it. And when they're going into those rallies, when they're going into those funerals, when they're going into those Harambes, and they're championing the interests of the BBI, they better tell the electorate exactly what is in the BBI, in the interests of the electorate to understand the document. Unfortunately, that is not what is happening. And that is why we are having some eminence of opposition even in the grassroots, because they've not understood the documents and their leaders are not telling them what is in the document. It is the type of leaders we're electing in this country who are not concerned about the electorates, but are concerned about their tumbo.
All right, having said that, because that has been quite an issue that has raised concern, that post the Naivasha retreat, now what's the way forward? What ought to happen? From what you're saying is sort of like the messaging should change from just championing for the BBI, but talking about what is this BBI anyway? So after doing that, what then do you recommend happens in case the Wananchi, the so-called Wanjiku, are not satisfied with what is presented in the BBI report?
For now, the system is ready to go. The members of parliament, over 300 of them, will be in every corner of this country. with one mandate to support the BBI and to rally the support of the BBI from the electorates. That's their command. They've gotten that command from their party leaders, Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, President Uhuru Kenyatta, as well as Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga.
So
those two excellencies have ordered them that go out and tell people about BBI. Now, how I wish that they would go further and tell people that when you go out there, please tell them what is in the BBI. Don't just tell them to support the BBI, even if they've not read it, even if they've not understood them. Take them through some contentious issues. And the biggest issue in this country that we're talking about is the governance. How is the president going to be elected? Let them know that we are changing the constitution so that things can change. But the president is still going to go to the ballot box, because people sometimes don't understand these changes until you explain to them that the president perhaps is given more power to appoint some new positions in government, like a prime minister, like the deputy prime minister, and that there will be an official office of the opposition leader as it is prescribed in the BBI. I think those are some of the issues that these MPs need to go out there and tell the people. Remember, it won't be long and they will be collecting. In fact, from what I'm being told, is that they're launching the committee that is going to propel the BBI to its execution. If that needs to happen, then within the next few days, we are talking about collection of signatures. In other words, it's going to go to every corner of this country. But you know, we are over 47 people in this country. All they need is about 1 million signatures. That they would get very easily. With the digitalization world, it will be very easy to get 1 million. As soon as those 1 million signatures are done, in fact, they're projecting maybe by the end of this month, they submit those signatures to IBC for verification, to authenticate whether these are genuine voters and they're in their registers. Once IBC has done that, then they prepare for, they will now carry those information and say, these are valid voters. They've actually said that we need to have a constitutional change because that number has to be there for any constitutional change. Then they will forward that discussion now to the county assemblies. And the county assemblies will have about a month. And the county assemblies will decide. For your information, they only need 24 county assemblies for that. And that's just a walk in the park. Yeah. A walk in the park. They will, in fact, they will do that thing in less than 30 days. And once that is done, it comes into Parliament. And then once Parliament votes for it, then it goes for an election.
So do you predict that this is a done deal? Is that the message you're sending this morning?
For now, what I am saying is this is a done deal. I am not seeing a possibility of any retraction, any changes to take place, because over 300 elected leaders said, we are going to support this. They have no chance to retract on their commitment yesterday. And that is why it's a done deal.
Having looked at the report, because I believe you have had a chance to interact with it, do you feel it should sail through just the way it is, from where you sit?
There is no perfect document in this world. I think what we need to agree on is, even though the Constitution is going to be changed, if there are issues that need a discussion, if there are issues that need a national dialogue, let's not stop it because the Constitution has been changed. Another thing is, there are many, many clauses in the Constitution that are never followed anyways. What I am saying is very simple. If people feel that this is how they want to be governed, do not stop listening to them. You better listen to them until the last minute, even if you're changing the Constitution your way. Mm-hmm. But in this case, there was a bit of public participation that was done. And if that public participation that was done actually twice, the first BBI, before the first BBI, and then the second BBI, if we never submitted our thoughts, then we have no reason to argue about it now. We better let it go, because we did not want to involve ourselves in the first place. And if the process took place very well, in fact, there were over 93 meetings and there were over 193 submissions, petitions to the BBI committee, and many others, over 200 of them. If we never thought that that was necessary and we didn't want to bring our thoughts and how we think this country needs to be governed, I think we better rest our horses and we better keep quiet and let this constitution, this BBI, be passed.
All right, coming out very clearly this morning, but or just like us, in the interest of fairness, to also just consider some of the pertinent issues that were raised that sort of others would term as opposition to the BBI report. Before we get into the report and look at some of the proposals contained in that, the other day, the Deputy President William Ruto, and we have had him, mention this on several occasions, he raised concerns about quite a number of issues. I'll just cite a few, and then you tell me what you think about his proposals. He's sort of talked about the changes to the formation of the IEBC, and said that he's having reservations on having competing teams appoint the referee, and it's not all competing teams but some competing teams. And the question he raised on the floor that day was the fact that, do you think if a referee is chosen using this particular method, will the game be fair? That was one issue. The other touched on the police commission, the National Police Service Commission, and he was really concerned about the proposal to have this controlled by the executive. And I'd like to ask you what you think this is going to have in terms of impact to the independence of the police service. And the other issue touched on the judiciary ombudsman, who, according to the current proposal, is supposed to be appointed by the president. Again, I would ask, how is this going to affect the independence of the judiciary? And I would remember the ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi actually even suggested that this ombudsman should be appointed by the Chief Justice, sort of just a way of ensuring that we maintain and safeguard the independence of the judiciary. On these key issues first, do you think there are valid concerns the DP was raising? Let's leave the issue of time and whether it's time for us to allow him air his views, but let's leave that aside for now. But if you just look at them in the interest of fairness, are they valid concerns? And on those issues that I've raised, do you feel like if we go his direction, then that sort of would, fill the gaps that are being left
Serfine,
in some of these proposals?
Let me start with IBC. The Deputy President is raising a finger on the IBC simply because he's not on the partaking table. If he was part and parcel of the people that were going to make a decision on who becomes a commissioner, he would not have raised a finger. He's doing that because he knows that his relationship with the President and Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, is probably not very good now, and he may not. But at one point they were very good. In fact, he helped select the committee, the BBI committee, and he had two, commissioners in there. You can see where this is. He knows that their relationship for now is not tenable for him to be given an opportunity to put somebody there. But I can tell you, until we will have a clear, non-contested election in this country, we will always want to kick IBC. In fact, IBC has been in the office for far too long. There is no day that Honorable Raila has ever come out of nomination and said IBC stays. No. Because this is the first IBC that has made the president, elected president, be taken to court. And his election nullified in the history of this country. The first IBC. Would you expect him to still be in the office? Absolutely not. It cannot be possible. It cannot. This is the IBC that was fighting its own CEO because of malpractices. This is the IBC that saw, Dr. Kombe leave the country fearing for her life. This is the IBC where, the IT, specialist was killed. Do you want this IBC to officiate another election in this country? It's not possible. It's not possible. Now, the process of electing, or appointing the commissioners is very key. But remember that this we've done before. The IPPG. Should we go this
direction, considering the political culture that we have in the country? Should we go this direction?
The parties are not going to accept. Remember, the political countries run this country. They're the people who take our elected leaders to parliament. The parties are not going to accept that the officials are people they do not know. We've seen the dishonesty, the lack of integrity among the IBC commissioners. They want their people there. If that is what they want and that's what the country fails, so be it. The only thing is that does not immune us, does not give us an immunity of corruption. It does not give us an immunity
having the people there.
But
a genuine move?
I really think that, again, it's not about whether it is genuine or not in this case. But I really think that it is one issue that if the politicians themselves say, this is how we want it, perhaps we need to take it a notch higher and say, who are these people that we're putting in this position? Are they men and women of authority? Are they men and women of integrity? Are they men and women that have questionable background? And I think we've done that before, where we bring people in a place that we want, people of great integrity. We bring people just because they are our people. And that has mangled the election in this country, unfortunately. I still think it's okay for the parties to be involved. The only thing I want us to say is let's go a notch higher. Mm-hmm. I've been involved in an electoral process in this country. And I know that the people who bundle the election are not necessarily those commissioners. They are those people called returning officers. They are the ones who change the figures and numbers. And when they change the figures and numbers, they will tell you go to court because the Constitution does not allow us, once you sign the form, to change anything in it. By the time you're going to court and spending all that money, and, we just saw a case where our MP, 3 years down the line, her election has been nullified. And then she's gone to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court will take another 1 year to decide on her case. By that time, the term of Parliament will be over. You can see what we're talking about here. So sometimes it's a waste of time. I strongly believe that we have to take our officials, to take personal responsibility. If a returning officer has, done some malpractice in electoral process, let that man go to court as an individual. So that we leave this collective responsibility of we are all IBC officers and we want to protect one another. And I think that's what is killing the election in this country. Mm-hmm. Many good people are not able to present themselves for an electoral process because of those malpractices. Because if you don't have somebody in the IT department, in the IEBC, then your name might not be there. We saw cases where basically people's names were taken overnight and the next day they are removed because they were trading with those names. Now that should not happen. We need men and women of integrity to be in these places.
By having the political parties involved in the appointment of the commissioners, will they birth those men and women of integrity? We will come back to that particular point in a bit. Let's now cross over back to the event that we were tracking for you earlier. That is the launch of the Year of Climate Action happening at Karura Forest. Currently speaking, I understand, is the Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Let's listen in.
Certification, then partners such as Absa Bank that committed last week, I spoke to Equity Bank yesterday, and there are many others, will be able to directly purchase those seedlings from the nurseries. But we have given a target, every county around 3 metric tons. We have set up a committee at the county levels led by the governor, county commissioner, and a multi-agency team. And it will go up to the village level. And we want to see if this can be implemented immediately. Further, the government of Kenya has committed 5.1 million hectares of degraded and deforested landscapes for restoration by 2030 as its contribution to the Africa Forest and Landscape Restoration Initiative, AFR 100. This is a Pan-African country-led effort to bring 100 million hectares of deforested and degraded landscapes. This commitment also covers Kenya's contribution to Bond Challenge, the New York Declaration on Forests, and Convention on Biological Diversity, high key targets, and land degradation neutrality targets. To close the funding gap in this sector, we are in the process of developing regulations for a national tree growing fund, and we will soon be inviting our partners to capitalize it. My minister is already in the process of engaging his colleague at the National Treasury. This is a fund that we are telling Treasury, this is money that cannot be raised through the normal budgetary process. Anyone who would be interested and may not want to deal with logistics of directly supporting, what I talked about, can put the money in that fund, and I think we'll announce that later. As I come to finalize, I want to say that as we jointly launch the Year of Climate Action today, let's remember vulnerable communities. ecosystems, and future generations. The Yoka roadmap include high-level international and national meetings and activities in the run-up to COP26, which will be held in November 2021 in Glasgow, UK. We must also be cognizant of the fact that taking climate action cannot be just a year-long affair as we race to COP26. It's our conviction that Yoka should be driven from the bottom by individuals, schools, businesses, non-profit organizations, and those in the public and private sector who we welcome to make public commitment to take action, acknowledging that everyone has a role to play in combating climate change. My office, and that's now the Cabinet Secretary talking, my office is open for those who want to make pledges for local action. And you can also come to my office as a PS. We will take stock of the progress as we move along. I'm impressed with the innovations and initiatives that are...
That is the PS in the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Chris Kipto, currently speaking at the launch of the Year of Action for Climate, the Year of Climate Action. And of course, this is happening at Karura Forest. We will be getting back to that particular function just to follow up on more that is happening as the UK-Kenya partnership is just embarking on a 12-month-long process of just celebrating and appreciating some of the milestones that have been made in areas such as climate policy, clean energy, and green finance. So that year commences in this particular month of November, and come around the same time in 2021, the UK will host COP26 in Glasgow. Now, Glasgow will be, just following up this particular story for you, and we give you more details about it. But aside from that, we are having a conversation in studio that touches on the BBI report, and I've been talking to Michael Agwanda, a political analyst. And Michael, we had just begun dissecting the issue of the IEBC and the process that ought to be used to appoint the commissioners as per the recommendations of the BBI report. And you seem to be strongly having a feeling that having the political parties involved will solve the problem of dissatisfaction that comes with every electioneering cycle. I was a bit concerned though, because I look at the culture of politics within the political parties that we have in our country. Take a good example during their political party nominations. There's still a high level of mistrust, and there seems to be biasness. There have been complaints before of somebody was hoodwinked, somebody was played, and processes are still not as clean as they ought to be within the political party, where these members of that political party have complete influence. So how then do you entrust such a responsibility to the same political parties to appoint commissioners in the IEBC?
Let me make this very clear. Political parties have their own constitution that governs them, rules and regulations that governs their nomination process.
Which sometimes they don't follow.
Which most cases they don't follow. That's a reality.
Yeah.
But they still have it. And then you have the political tribunal that the parties will send you to if you're not satisfied with the nomination process. That is not necessarily what the national election process looks like. The national election that is headed by the chairman of IBC is a very sensitive position. Remember that nominations are never done in the whole country for these political parties. There's some places they just say, we are not going to go there because we know we'll not get anything from there. But national elections, it is done in every corner of this country. The reason why I see in the BBI, recommending that they need the commissioners of IBC need to be, from the political parties, is because the political parties themselves will not have allowed BBI to go through if they were not having an eye within the commissioners. They want to have an interest for that reason. Remember, the presidency of this country is one of the most contested positions that you can ever think of. It's so complicated. What I can say for a fact is, so long as the IBC is still being paid by the taxpayers. We can only pray that the government will not interfere with their work. But if the government wants to interfere with their work, we are still far away in our democracy to ascertain that indeed the government interfered with their work and the government got whomsoever they want. How we pray that the governance of IBC will be as independent as possible. But we've seen that sometimes they do not even have the equipment in the first place. And therefore, there's a bit of what we call international influence in some of the things they are having. They have to print their papers abroad. They have to ballot papers abroad. They have to have a server in France. When people are working in court here, somebody is sleeping in France, as you could hear their lawyers saying that indeed we cannot even open the servers because they're still sleeping there. I don't know which server. If you put anything on the cloud doesn't sleep. Anything you want from it, you'll get it. So you can see that there could be much interference sometimes with the IBC, not necessarily on the basis of the people that have been put there. However, the bottom line is, if political parties are not represented there, then they will hit this thing and it will not see the light of the day. It's give and take. Give and take, and that is what is happening. The second question you asked was in regards to National Police Service, that now they want to change, commission, they want to change to a council. All
right, allow me to come to that as we come back from this particular break. We are going to be picking up from that particular point. And of course, we're just talking about the BBI report, talking about opening the servers. A lot of interesting issues coming out from this conversation. We continue to invite your views as well on the conversation. We'll be sampling some of them on the other side of the break. We take that break now.
KBC, in collaboration with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, is broadcasting enhanced out-of-class learning on radio, television and online. Catch the lessons every weekday on KBC Channel 1 from 2 to 4 p.m, on KBC English Service and 15 FM from 9:15 a.m. to 5 p.m, and Radio Taifa from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. KBC English Service, Radio Taifa and 15 FM are also available countrywide on the free-to-air Signet digital TV platform, or log on to www.kbc.co.ke for live streaming, or download the KBC Online app on Google Play Store. Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, ensuring learning no matter what.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
What you came here?
I came here to make you see that you're walking in the wrong direction. I care for you.
It's your job to make sure he finds his balance. I can't do anything about that.
Can't or won't.
Kuna base fulani nimegeta hapa karibu, sifa na hapa lakini at least kwa bit better.
Njala alikamwona.
He's looking good.
Don't you know? He's back.
Wait, he's back?
Yeah.
People gonna say all kind of things about you.
With them on. Just shake up. Need to mushia one, don't to mushia.
When your booty got show me now.
Baby, one time. Bossy baby, give me 2 times. Full 180. Crazy.
Let's go. Ha. I needed some with some bopping.
Mamacita, where you at? I've been trying to reach you.
Katoto shepu awe, ayawe, ayawe.
Tekenya katoto, kamini tekenya, tekenya katoto.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Didn't tell her that I left you locked up, did you?
I would have loved to tell her that. What's wrong? Jorge's downstairs. I'm gonna tell him to look for a locksmith.
I have a strong feeling he's threatening her.
What should we do?
I have too many problems to have to put up with your complaints right now. You're there already. Just enjoy the hotel and then go back to take care of the old lady.
I know perfectly well where you are. This time you're not gonna be as lucky. So tell your woman to be very careful.
I've always loved you. And I will always love you.
In love with Ramon.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. In case you're just joining us, you're just in time for News Check, a program that seeks to explore issues that are shaping the news in the country. And today we are talking about the Building Bridges Initiative Task Force report that was unveiled just a few days ago. And yesterday we saw members of parliament who are pro-BBI conclude a two-day retreat in Naivasha, where they agreed on, among other issues, the way forward on how to push forward the campaign to the public on the BBI report adoption. Now, we have been having a conversation with Michael Agwanda on the issues that are emanating from this conversation. And Michael, before we went to the break, we were just talking about the National Police Service and the council that, according to the current proposal, ought to be chaired by the Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Interior. Do you think this is a step in the right direction?
The independence of the police must be maintained. There is something that in this country people have not realized that is so important to the growth and development of democracy, and that is something called lobbying. When the BBI was the BBI committees were hearing petitions, what government agencies, and especially the independent government agencies, ought to have done is they should have lobbied their position, whether it's National Police Service, whether it is DCI, whether it is Parliament, whether it is Senate, whether it is whatever organization, the disability group, they should have lobbied. And I know some lobbied. But the problem is, some people sit pretty in their offices and they think that we have a job and there will be nothing that can interfere with our job. In a change of the Constitution, if Constitution is being discussed for the possible change, you need to have your ears there and you need to be represented if you want to maintain your independence. That, to me, is where the rain started beating the National Police Commission. Is where the rain started beating the judiciary. Is where the rain started beating many other changes that are taking place today with people that thought they were so independent and they could not be touched. In the US, for example, lobbyists are very, very key to the changes of the Constitution, and not only the changes of the Constitution, but also the changes of bills in the upper house or even the lower house. It's very key to even a point of how much money is going to the different states in this country. You'll equate it to different counties, for example. What are the POC projects that are in between the allocated sum of money that must go to other counties? Those are what the lobbyists are doing. But Kenyans have not started to appreciate that line of lobbyists. That is why the Senate is coming out now and they're saying, oh, we should have been the upper house. Where were you? Why were you not lobbying? Because they sat pretty, and they thought that if they sat pretty, they're the senators, that nothing will interfere with their processes, nothing will interfere with their mandate. They are crowing foul, and they were right there. They were right there. Hence the reason why this is a little bit difficult, because if the BBI is going to be changed, we have no any other way to change this if they decided that it's going to go as it is. And therefore, as much as we may say the independence of the police must be maintained, I also say that they should have had lobbyists to lobby for them so their stakes would remain as it is if they wanted the status quo. But because they never lobbied, the changes are going to be done.
Are you saying that they were not present when these conversations were being held?
I believe they must have been somewhere, but they didn't know how to go about lobbying. I remember when we were representing an agency, we went and presented our case to the commissioners. And after presenting our case, we also had a little chit-chat with some of those commissioners. In other words, just get some of their views on the document we took there and what they thought about it, okay? And perhaps sometimes you need to go, if the stakes are higher, you need to even go a step further to engage them, to enlighten them on what that document says. Remember, these were many, many documents, and I can tell you, not all those commissioners, some of them are pretty aged, not all of them are going to read all those documents. So you need to look at who is in a position to read this document, understand it, and translate it to the other commissioners. And I'm not saying that they were not able to read all of them. A number of them were able to read, but I can tell you, for one way or for one reason or the other, a commissioner might not have been in the meeting. He might have been sick. He might have, it could be under the weather or any other reason. So the majority will take, will take the day. But I can tell you, if you had somebody that is following up on your issue every single day, that issue will be on the table, and perhaps it would have found itself. So I'm thinking that the National Police Commission never thought that their position will be interfered with, and their independence will be interfered with, because they thought, oh, it's in the Constitution. But what they forgot is the Constitution is exactly what was being discussed on matters of changes.
So essentially what you're saying is that, having the executive involved in the running of affairs in the National Police Service Commission is going to interfere with its independence.
Definitely.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing for the country from where you sit?
It's both ways. Remember that you could have a very good document, but if you have a bad president, they'll trash the Constitution. If you have a good document, a good president, he will support what is in the Constitution. And even though it might be tilted towards his advantage, he might actually act in fairness. So sometimes you look at the law and you say it's got to be in the law, but when you get a president who doesn't care about the law, it will not happen. So in this case, it's two-edged sword. The executive might use it in the interest of the people, but the executive sometimes can use it in their own interest. We've seen both sides happen.
All right. The appointment of the Judiciary Ombudsman. First of all, for Kenyans to understand, because we're using this as an awareness platform, what role is this going to play? What value add is it going to have for us in the access to justice in this country? And of course, also tell us whether you agree or disagree with having the president be given the responsibility to appoint who becomes then the ombudsman.
Where we are as a country, the only way to understand the role of ombudsman is the country ombudsman, which is under, now it's an independent office. Previously, it was in the office of the Attorney General. This is an office where citizens can go and have a complaint against the government, against a private citizen, if their rights are not protected and if their rights are being violated, if their services are not being rendered for one reason or other, or somebody is taking advantage of them because of their position. This is a place you can go and petition your complaints and say, this is what I'm feeling, and I feel that I am just an ordinary citizen, but somebody is taking advantage of me. And for that reason, I want you to take up this matter, as a government, so that I could have a fair hearing. That can happen. Now, that's what the Office of the Country Ombudsman does. When you say that you are going to appoint a judiciary ombudsman, all you're saying is you're appointing somebody also, you're creating another power. You've not scrapped the position of the Chief Justice in this country, who is the head of the judiciary in this country. You've not scrapped that position. But when you create the Office of Ombudsman, you're actually creating a second power, where basically, if you do not agree with the system and how the system is being run in the judiciary, they can report to the ombudsman and not necessarily the Judiciary Service Commission. Mm-hmm. Because the Judiciary Service Commission is now the body that is mandated by 2010 Constitution to listen to any complaints you might have against the judiciary or a judiciary officer or against a case, or most cases they also do the employment and interviews of the judicial officers. Now, when you take that role away from the judiciary, that is actually men and women appointed, as a representation from the judges, a representation from the magistrate, and a representation of the Supreme Court, because the Chief Justice sits in that Judiciary Service Commission.
The Ombudsman will also sit in the commission. That's
in this case, what we are thinking, what the public is thinking, is then when you have, remember the president has about two or three people that he appoints in the Judiciary Service Commission. There are two people. There's a church, a religious organization sends somebody there to represent the church. We also have somebody that is sent there, by the interest of the president. So the president is already having people at JSC that are actually representing his interests. But of course, the chair of the Judiciary Service Commission becomes, the Chief Justice for that reason. We do not need to create two centers of power. The independence should be very clear. The president at least has a leeway to appoint 2 or 3 people that sit in that, in JSC. And he has a direct access to that. Mm-hmm. In my own opinion, it would have been important for JSC to be left as it is. However, I come back to what I was saying again. I know this has not been spoken about. JSC sat pretty, and they did not lobby the changes that were coming in the Constitution, in the BBI. And because they sat pretty, they didn't care what was going to come there because they thought that the place was secured. Remember, a process like this, the only way to be involved in it, the only way to be part of it is if you are involved in it. And they were not. Perhaps they sat pretty, these things were being discussed, and they didn't care. I mean, we had Attorney General who sits in that, committee, and Attorney General Emeritus Amos Wako was right in that committee. Why did they have a conversation with Attorney General Amos Wako and ask him several questions in regards to what was the changes that were going to take place? They didn't lobby. They had their own there, but they never lobbied, in my view. So if they didn't lobby and the view of the people, carried the day, then why are they complaining now? That is the most unfortunate aspect of it.
A matter that has to be confirmed, though, whether they presented their views or not, whether they appeared in these hearings and they gave their submissions or not, because we are really not sure that they sat pretty, as you say this morning. But let's talk about the other big debate that has shaped the conversation around the BBI report. That is, the changes to the governance structure, sort of having a hybrid system of running the country. And, those who support the BBI initiative say that perhaps it was a good time for us to have sort of something that is tailor-made to meet the needs of the country, something that would represent our diversities. But do you think this is it? Is this the silver bullet that will now heal, what we have been experiencing, feeling like other people, other tribes, other, regions have been left behind when it comes to the leadership positions in this country? Is creating the position of a prime minister who has 2 deputies and the leader of official opposition going that direction? Do you think it will actually, solve the problem?
Serfine, until this country realizes that our situation and our political arena is very, very different from the other nations, we will never have, that's it, this is what's going to solve our problem. We'll never reach there. I think, first of all, we need to identify ourselves as a country and say, who are we? How dynamic are we? What are the historical injustices? What are the current happening, and where are we headed? I strongly believe that this country, we do a lot of copy and paste in what is happening in other countries. By the way, we do a lot of benchmarking. And if you look at our county assemblies, if you look at our parliamentarians, if you look at our senates, the big chunk of money is spent traveling, which is not bad in my view. But we are learning so many ideas until we get convoluted to a point where we cannot decide on what we want. I strongly believe that the Kenyan's problem can only be resolved in our own way, in our own unique way. The governance that has been proposed in the BBI, and that is going to see the light of the day as I see it. I don't see anybody opposing this and running away with it. That I don't see. I don't see that is possible. I will have my views a little bit different. However, the politicians have said, we elected them, and then they went there, they represented us, and now they're carrying the day. The political parties that we belong to, said that it's a good thing. And now we have no choice to retreat on this, because when they were having this discussion, we were not there. That's the most unfortunate thing. And perhaps even if we were there, maybe we became the minority in my view. And if we became the minority in my view, then the winner, the majority takes the day. And that's how complicated politics is and what you call democracy. And that is why we are having a mixed feeling about this democracy of Kenya, because we seem not to have a clear definition of what our democracy is. I would have wished that we go either India way. So that if you have a prime minister, the prime minister comes from a different party. That is what I would have wished. The president comes from another different party. In that way, even if you're sharing parliament, you're sharing governance, but you are people of different interests, but you are agreeing to form a government in the interest of the people.
But
in that way, you have checks.
Opposition.
You have an office of the official opposition, which is okay. But remember, the president in this case appoints a prime minister. The president appoints the deputy prime minister. And the prime minister sort of runs parliaments where rules and regulations, laws are being made in this, bills are being passed in this country. And for that reason, the prime minister is hugely powerful in this case. Hugely. In fact, what the Constitution is envisaging is that the President delegates some of his responsibilities to the Prime Minister to run the country and to run the House. And that means it's a very powerful position. But where you have a situation basically where the president can fire the prime minister without reverting to parliament is where the problem is. What I think is the problem is. But if they know how they're going to resolve it once the prime minister is appointed and once the deputy prime minister is appointed, and if they know that it could be vetoed, because there are many ways also to veto a position that has been elected in parliament. We've seen some of these committee members that have been thrown out, and then they're still serving in the interest of their own party. So basically what I'm saying is this bit of give and take, it might not have been the perfect situation in this country for now, but that's what it is. And perhaps that is why they're creating the office of official opposition leader. In that way, it's an official office funded by the taxpayers, and he can say whatever he wants. He can go to any part of this country and he can challenge the government on what they're doing. Remember, this is a very, very important office that is also being created. It might not have been my best type of governance, but as it is, we are going to have it. And so we just need to agree to the reality. How do we work around it so that all Kenyans are able to accept it and all Kenyans are able to support it in their own interest, and that the leaders that will be elected. Remember, my only problem is when I hear the likes of the Deputy President saying that we're creating positions, this BBI is creating positions for individuals. I don't think Constitution is made for positions, because tomorrow the very people that you think those positions are being created for are not going to be there. Who knows what will happen tomorrow? So I really think we need to have a debate on, if this is going to happen, how do we ensure that it will be done well, that the president will be fair to the country and will say, I do not have to be the president. I elect somebody from my own party and elect the deputy president from my own party and, the deputy prime minister from my own party. That kind of argument. And then say, can we have a fair way of doing it so that even if it's from another party, it doesn't necessarily have to be from your party, but somebody who can help you run the country, and run it well.
Well said, Michael. And I like what you pointed out there, that we need to have like a long-term vision about how we go about this issue of changing the Constitution. When you say that there are people who are having the opinion that this is actually a move to create positions for a few individuals, those people will not be in power tomorrow. So even as we continue having this conversation, let's think about tomorrow and the future generations. How will this impact their life? Let's not be vested in the interest of those who are here today, the us of today. Let's focus on tomorrow. But then I want us also to look at whether this is going to solve the challenges of the winner-take-it-all electoral formula. That has been the talk, that by creating what has been termed as an inclusive form of government, then we are going to solve that problem. Do you think this formula can actually work to solve the winner-take-it-all? And do you want the winner-take-it-all electoral formula to be done away with going forward?
The winner-take-it-all is what make our every 5 years very contentious, to a point where people have been killed, maimed, murdered, displaced from their homes, family displaced, and some people ejected from work, clear discrimination by tribe, and many, many other sufferings that has befallen Kenyans in the past. I want to agree with the tone of the BBI, that never again should people suffer because of an election. Never again should people be displaced because of an election. Never again should people be killed and maimed and burned in the church because of an election. I want to go that way. If that is what BBI is going to create for us, so be it. Because I really think that this country will have grown economically tenfold if we were not having an emotive election and an emotive election every 5 years. Remember that every after the election, you have about a year to settle down. Like I know last general election, even 2005, 2006, owing to 2007 general election, there were a lot of people that exited this country and said, oh, we want to go and we'll come back just when you're okay. The people that were left here to suffer were genuine Kenyans that really bear the brunt of the suffering. Their shops being burnt down, their businesses being completely, them being ejected from their businesses. And some families even were separated, just the mere fact that they were married from somebody who was not from their community. We don't want that to happen. We want a serious discussion where we say this should never happen before. But that happens simply because few people don't want to do very transparent and reputable election in this country. I hope that the winner-take-it-all will cease through this constitutional change. The only way for us to do that is not to pass this BBI and sit pretty and wait for an election time. This is something that needs to be taught in school. This is a discussion that needs to be in the mouth of the politicians. This is a discussion that needs to be in our colleges. This is a discussion that needs to be also entrenched into our debate every single moment. that we are all brothers and sisters, and that we belong to the same country, and that we will never be, in another country. And even if we went to another country, that country will never be ours. I've lived in the United States for America for many, many years. But as soon as I open my mouth, somebody will tell me, oh, where do you come from? They know that I'm not from there. This is the only place where I can sit free, and when I talk, people know that I am a Kenyan. I believe that discussion must be advanced. That discussion must be encouraged. And we cannot divide people based on class, based on the poor and the rich, based on their communities or where they live. That must stop. And the only way, if the BBI is going to bring that unity, it's going to bring that discussion and the peace that we require, then it will be the interest of this country for us to grow economically and for us to also be a people that can invest in any part of this country and do business in any part of this country and still feel safe.
Is expanding the executive, though, going to allow us have an inclusive form of government? For some tribes who feel they've never been included in the leadership of this country, will they be contented this time around if we go the BBI direction?
Equity is still going to be a big issue. Equitable distribution of resources is still going to be a big issue. This is what democracy comes with. We are growing democracy. Not everybody will feel included. We know that if you take the statistics of what is in the government, there's some communities that are more in the government based on the fact that, this is an open math. The president said, we are hell-bent to this tribal thing, and he's been a victim of the same, not a victim, but he's been a partaker of the same, when he was in Bomas. And so are many, many leaders. How would you get, to government employment, for example? Most cases, it's based on somebody who was there before, ahead of you, bringing some of their relatives, and it's easier for them because they make that decision, and we cannot run away from that. But then what makes it a little bit difficult when you have nobody that can represent your community in a certain place. I strongly believe that we need to look at the people we are electing, because sometimes we elect people into parliament and we want them to champion the interests of our constituency and the people that are coming from that constituency, and they never do it. They don't care whether their constituency is represented in the National Police Service. They never care whether their constituency is represented in the military. They don't follow it. Well, there are some elected leaders that ensures that every time the police are recruiting, that their people will be there. And so I really think it takes us back to the electorate and say, what type of people are you electing in parliament, in the county assembly? What type of people are you electing in the Senate? Because if you elect the right people who will fight for you, you'll find yourself on the table, being discussed. But if you elect somebody based on 50 bob and 100 bob and bribes in the county, I can guarantee you that man will come to Nairobi and will stay in Nairobi, and he'll only come back when he wants votes. So I really think that a sense of unity can only be brought about when we have an active civil society that look at the employment in this country, that look at the national cake and say, why did we leave this area? Remember that we are having some wards that are represented by people who never went to school, and if they can't even look at a document, a bill in the county assembly, and that means that the county executive takes advantage of them, and so you find some wards developing because they have a smart, educated, ward rep, but the others that do not ask about the development in their own place don't get it. Right. And so I really think in terms of whether this is going to heal the aspect of inclusivity and exclusivity, it is a discussion that must go on.
And it should go beyond the positions that are being created.
Correct.
All right, let's talk about the cost implications, because they also talk that among the raft of recommendations that were made yesterday include having additional seats in the National Assembly to address the gender gap and also bring on board persons with disabilities and those underrepresented on issues to do with the leadership of this country. If you look at that direction and also look at the proposal to have senators who represent both genders, having one male senator and one female senator, having that proposal as a way of sort of just bridging the gender gap in terms of the leadership of the country. A step in the right direction, one would say, but at what cost?
Let's look at the SRC first of all and see what they do. They are supposed to control the salaries of civil servants. Make sure that you're paid what you're supposed to be paid based on your qualification and responsibilities that you have. I think they failed in capturing what members of parliament are supposed to get by the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen a battle, even the budget, people controlling the budget have had issues with that. We've seen members of parliament being paid, salary, but also getting sitting allowance, for example. Something that is being questioned. Why are you paying me a salary? And anytime I sit down, you also have to pay me. The county assembly are also earning the same sitting allowance. But I want to say something. We are losing 600 billion, close to, approximately, every single year through corruption. Even if you add all these positions and pay them genuinely, all you need to do is just to make sure that we cap the corruption into a half. Once you cap corruption into a half, you're able to pay all these people. Remember that the money you're paying these people, in my view, and this I categorically, you need to convince me. This money, these people are Kenyans. When they get this money, they're not going to spend it in Nigeria or Zambia. They will spend it in this country. It is their community that will benefit. And when you pay them well, this I agree with too. When you pay them well, it is the place they come from. I know that if I'm doing a little building in my community for one reason or the other, the people who are there get that money directly, and that's how you grow every corner of this country. So my point is very clear.
No. I mean, not let you finish. I mean, is that adequate justification, though, that they will spend this money in Kenya, the people in their communities will benefit? So let's just pay them until we win the war on corruption, which I agree with you. A lot of money we lose in corruption, but until we win this war, where are we going to get this money?
The money is there.
Kenya is ranked among the countries that are overrepresented globally. Do we still need more?
You see, that is what the people and the people we elected needed to go to BBI to present their petition and say, no, reduce the number. Remember that in the BBI, if they went there, they capped the 290 constituencies and say, do not touch this. You can't make any amendment. It will remain. In fact, now they're saying that there are some super constituencies that might have 1 or 2 members of parliament.
Yeah, I was getting to that.
So basically what I am saying, it is possible we can pay these people. But remember, the people that are making these decisions are the people we elected.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're the people we elected who are making these decisions, then you have no place to run to, because you elected either the wrong person or the right person. And in this case, what I am saying is what they're going to earn, in my view, and remember, this will continue. This is a discussion that is not going to stop. When we are at 100 million, we will say we need more representation, whether you like it or not. And so what I'm saying is cap on corruption, pay these people, because that money still belongs to Kenyans.
But until we win that war on corruption, which I agree, where are we going to get the money? You've talked about the issue to do with some constituencies that are going to be having 2 members of parliament. This is one of the actually recommendations that came forth from the Naivasha retreat, that there's going to be a formula for allocation of seats in which counties that are presently underrepresented by virtue of having a heavy population will, on the basis of a population quota of about 132,000 people per MP, receive additional lawmakers. Do we need that? Because in a county, we have the county governor, we have the deputy county governor, we have the senator. Now we're going to be having a male senator and a female senator, and we have the MCAs, we have an MP. How can you tell me again that there are people who feel that they are not represented, that they are underrepresented, just because there are so many in one constituency?
I come from a very far-fetched constituency called Ndewa.
But you have an MCA there.
We have an MCA. In fact, there are 7 in that constituency. But I can tell you that the constituency is vast, with a huge number of registered voters, over 95,000 registered voters. That constituency, there are no roads. That constituency has a lot of voters, and they're very sensitive politically. That constituency was represented by one known gentleman who died on the plane crash called Honorable Orwa Jode. I can tell you that that constituency should have been divided way back when the boundary review committee was doing its work. But because of politics, they never divided it. Sometimes our politicians and our elected politicians have no interest of the people on the ground, but how they can be re-elected, unfortunately. We have Karachuonyo, which is a huge constituency also in Homa Bay County, that it won't be long before they say we want 2 members of parliament. And that is exactly what will happen in Ndewa. Because if you told the Ndewa people today that all you need is 132,000 registered voters, they will reach that mark in the next few months, and they will expect another MP. I strongly believe that representation is very important. Remember, when they were having this summit in Naivasha, one of the things that members of parliament asked for is that the CDF must be maintained. It is in record that CDF brought a lot of grassroots development than any other project in the history of this country. If you need 2, I mean, we have a place like Ruiru constituency. Ruiru has over 500,000 people represented by 1 member of parliament. That is a huge number that needs to be divided into other, members of parliament.
How many lawmakers are we going to have in a place like Ruiru, for example? But my question, taking you back to my question, and I agree that there could be an issue with representation when the population is too huge for 1 member of parliament. But no wonder we have members of the county assembly representing that constituency that has been divided into wards. And we're going to be having a ward development fund also being introduced. I mean, aren't we replicating or duplicating roles?
I just hope that this is not going to be part of corruption. I've seen in some cases where a member of parliament is building a road or is repairing a road in the past, and the county also comes and put a post and say that we actually constructed this road. And Kera also comes and says, oh, we are the one constructing this road with the MP. I believe that checks and balance need to be introduced into this country, so that if the county is doing a project, let it be known that it's a county. An MP does not come around and say, I'm doing this, and Kera does not come around and say, oh, I'm just doing this road. And then the money is pocketed because you're having 3 individuals involved in one road and they all want to take credit. The question is, where was the money that was allocated from the county to repair that very road? So I believe that some people need to take responsibility on some of these huge development projects that are happening in the constituency that are supposed to be taken by one agency, but everybody is claiming it. Once we come to a point basically where we can say it is wrong to do a wrong, and if you do it, there are consequences and you'll be held accountable as an individual, I think we'll go somewhere. I don't think overrepresentation is bad if we can afford it. I just think that the corruption in this country is probably the worst cancer we have for the development of this country. There are only few people in this country that are involved in multi-billion corruption. It's not many people. So sometimes when you look at all this representation and you say, oh, 390 members of parliament, that's going to be a huge. Remember that if you don't give that 390 members of parliament that money, 2 or 3 people are going to take that money home, and they won't fill it.
Is that justification really valid, Michael?
I strongly believe
that if you don't give them, somebody else will. Does that then make us have the money to give them?
Unfortunately, as it may sound, that is what is happening in this country. You just saw what has happened in Kemsa. You saw how COVID millionaires came about.
So spend it because somebody else will?
Basically, what I am saying,
making sense?
I only hope, I'm not saying that, I only hope that more representation will be able to embolden people and our elected leaders to say no to some of these vices, to every corner. And say, if we are two in a constituency and the other MP is not doing the right thing, and you know that he's taken money, you'll say, but I'm not doing that road, because this is where I'm supposed to work, and that guy was given money just like I was given money. Why can't he fix that road? You'll probably be having a second eye in that constituency and making a lot of noise, and maybe things will grow. I mean, things will develop in the interest of that confusion.
I was actually concerned about the same thing when it comes to the female and the male senator, about the power struggle and who will be doing what and to what extent, what marks the boundary on the responsibility of the female senator and the male senator. I mean, it's a progressive process. We're still learning about the BBI, but a lot of questions are actually being raised about this particular report. But I'm concerned about the economic impact this is going to have. And at this particular juncture, I'll bring in the cost of the referendum as well. We are in the midst of a COVID-19 pandemic that has brought an economic downturn. For a very long time, we were completely shut down when it comes to the economic activities in the country. And now what follows is conversations around the BBI. What follows is a roadmap to the referendum. And this is going to come with a lot of cost implications. Do you think we can actually sustain the weight?
Our budget is about about 3 trillion for that reason, 3.2 trillion. What we are able to generate as a country is probably about 2.2 trillion for that reason. Or some people say maybe 1.8 trillion for that reason. There are about trillion that will come from, bilateral partners, will come from borrowing. We are at that threshold now where, the World Bank is saying we are almost passing that mark, which is not very, very good. Remember, things like referendum, in the interest of the country, if it is for the common good, most cases you'll have partners injecting some money. Kenya may not be able to afford it. Not that they don't have the money, but there are other we have. You've rightfully mentioned COVID-19. You've mentioned money that needs to go and buy desk, expansion of school and classrooms that need to be built.
And cushion Kenyans who've lost their jobs.
And cushion Kenyans who lost their jobs.
Yeah.
My only take home in the BBI, if you ask me, is perhaps we needed to invest more. We needed to have looked at our social, what we call social security, so that people who've lost their jobs, how can they get their stipends? Not just about the old people, but how about those who lost their jobs? How about those who are not able to take their kids to school? We've seen cases where people have moved back to the villages simply because they were not able to pay rent for that reason. Are we able to track those people and say, but if you've lost your job, that means you're not able to take your child to school where that child used to go to school? So I think what we missed in this document, in my view, is the aspect of social security, where we can give back to men and women that we know have been building this country in one way or the other, in a gainful employment or perhaps in businesses, but they've lost it. How do we ensure that we give them stipends to carry them on until they're able to be stable? But the question of whether we're able to support it or not, remember that the government seems to know where the money is coming from. I think the Budget and Appropriation Chairman Committee, our chairman, say very clearly that all I need is just bring this thing to Parliament and we'll make sure that we have a budget for it and you'll have the money for it. So really, if they're already talking and they're confident that the money will be there, perhaps they know where the money is going to come from.
There already talks about, how soon this should happen, probably June 2021, probably April. But it's a matter of wait and see, and how then are we going to fund this process and, make it a reality if we are to go that direction? conversation. But then just allow me to appreciate a few of our viewers who are watching us. Vindi King, thank you so much for sharing. Kasera Washington Onyango, you're saying watching from 001, Mr. Agwanda is right. On BBI, let this document pass. DP and his allies have been known for opposing things. He opposed the 2010 Constitution and now BBI, so his critics are not new to us. And of course, we have one, Victor watching from Siaya. Thank you so much. Kenneth Ochido, enjoying the show from Nairobi. We appreciate your feedback. I'll be sampling more as we continue with the conversation. And also remember the question we've asked you this morning, whether you think leaders should engage on consensus when it comes to the BBI report. We will be sampling more views about that. Should leaders engage on consensus building over the BBI report? We are asking you that question this morning. Now, very quickly, Michael, is it a win for women and the youth, the BBI report?
I think it is a win for women. It's a huge win. I know that there are a number of senators that were saying, we don't need this number of women in the Senate. I can see where they're coming from, but it's still a big win for affirmative action. I only hope, and this is my personal opinion, that these goodies that they're giving women in terms of position will end in the near future. I think what we need in this country is a free, fair electoral process where people don't fight and people don't insult one another. And then you allow women to go out for these positions in their own free will, without necessarily saying that we're creating a seat for you. And I think that aspect of giving, like you're giving goodies to women, perhaps will relegate them to supporters and not equals with people that have been elected based on a fight, based on ideologies, based on vision, based on their development agenda. I only hope that this affirmative action will now take a backseat, and then the women will prove themselves that they can actually, work in the interest of the women. My only problem with this aspect of the women representation is that I really don't think that a senator, a male senator, will only be interested in the interests of the men, and the women senator will only be interested in the women. I really think that this is an opportunity for two senators to sit down and say what is good for our county, so that we are not dividing our electorates in the middle and saying, oh, you are representing men, oh, you are representing just women. I think that is, to me, will be a better way just to not pass anything in the Senate. Mm-hmm. But if their interest is to represent the county, and they can sit down and agree and vote as a county and say this is in the interest of our county and we are voting for this because we know it will benefit our mamas and it will benefit our youth.
Coming from
on the youth aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, before we get to the youth. Coming from a background where we've seen the senators immediately disagreeing with the elected governor as soon as the election is done, the deputy governors also, there's always that bittersweet relationship. I mean, I'm yet to see how we are going to have this formula work without that power struggle between the male and the female senator if their roles are not clearly defined. For us to have what you're describing, serving the interest of Wanjiku, that's just what I wanted to add there. But then let's talk about how the voice of the youth is coming out clearly through this report. Do you hear it? Do you feel like the youth are represented and they have their grievances addressed in the BBI report?
The BBI report is trying to accommodate the youth. But I have learned that in the political arena, if you are not on the table where discussions are taking place, you will not even get what belongs to you. That's the reality of the political arena and the political situation. When I was growing up, we had what was called National Youth Lobby, and I was representing Kisumu as a National Youth Lobby representation. And there were National Youth Lobby representation all over the country, and occasionally we'll come to Nairobi. And when we came to Nairobi, we would discuss the interests of the youth in the country. And it was a huge forum that was actually being funded by international community in the interest of changing the type of leadership we have in this country. I know that there's a 30% rule of the disability, the women and the youth in the Constitution today. and more so in the counties. The question is, are the youths fronting themselves to get those positions? Unfortunately not. Because of the red tapes that are there. You're given a job, you do not have the capital to do it. What happens? You give it to another adult. Or they use your company and they do the business and they give you stipends for that reason. Until the voice of the youth will be heard. For now, the youths are very busy in their tablets. They're very busy on their phones. They're checking WhatsApp and many other things. But they do not know that that is a tool that they can force the county government to ensure that anybody that is given that bit of that 30% rule or the contract is given to them. And they can actually say, we need the names of these companies that you're giving these contracts. And if you don't show it to us, we will, take you to court for one reason or the other. We'll take you to court for that. They're not doing that because they're not united. They're spending a lot of their time on the phone and on tablets and taking photos within the cities of Nairobi. Not in a bad way, but what I'm saying, that they have to go out there and speak, and people must hear them. If they don't do that, their position will still be taken, even if these changes are made.
Coming from somebody who just said you've been lobbying for the young people, that's really an unfortunate statement. Talk to young Kenyans in this country who've gone through the academic system for years only to come out and they lack jobs. Tell them to start a business. Where do you expect them to get the capital to start a business? You tell them to look for these jobs. They tell you 10 years experience. They've never even been employed once. Where do you expect them to get that 10-year experience? I mean, wouldn't you say that to some extent the country has been unfair to the young person?
I say yes, and I say no at the same time. I was a youth, and when I didn't have anything, I started a small business. It was only 7,000 business, and I grew it. There are people who've left college in this country and cannot even go to farm. They're in the villages. They are highly educated to go to farm. I know of a boy who had first class at the university. He didn't have a job. He started fish farming, and he's doing it in the village, and he's doing very well. The question is, if we think we went to university and that we went there because we wanted a white-collar job, it is very unfortunate. And that's a reality. It's a hard talk. It's a hard discussion. I don't care even if you went to the university. You come out here and you're doing mandazis on the road. My colleague once told me that he was looking at a gentleman that was doing mandazis beside the road. And every day the boy was putting a lot of mandazis. And he was wondering what is happening with this boy. So one day he stopped and he went and had a discussion with this guy. This guy had a degree. He had a clear knowledge of where he was going to. He was doing mandazis. By the end of the day, he had a house to pay rent. But if we want to stay at home, I can tell you, nobody will speak for you. And let me tell you, without resources, no one will hear your voice. Because if you want to demonstrate, you'll probably have to drive to maybe your county headquarters or use a motorbike to your county headquarters. But how are you going to get that money? You will not get it from the politicians because they will not allow you to advance that kind of discussion. You must be able to do something to generate little income so that you can go and petition yourself to the authorities. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we've not been unfair to them. We've been unfair to them in great proportion, and especially in issues of concentrating and having our kids get a degree in everything and nothing, and then you forget about that this country can only grow with blue-collar job, and that is the technician job, without necessarily having a degree. You go to somebody to ask him for a job, and he asks you, do you have a degree? And if you have a degree, he says, but you need to do masters in this. Well, those things are not running the first world economies. What is running the first world economy is a blue job, making your hands dirty. And I did that to be where I am today.
But not so many young people would say they were as fortunate as you are, because some, yes, they have their ideas and they're very innovative. In fact, we have a very huge population of young people, if we are ranked globally with other countries, who are very innovative. We export labor, and they're brilliant minds that we export to other countries. But we are not really keen on investing in terms of giving them resources to start these businesses we are talking about. There are so many funds that were created for the young people, but talk to them in the streets today, a lot of them will tell you access to these funds becomes a nightmare. The moment you step to the doors, you knock the doors to get the funds, it's a process. You're taken through circles just to access funds. How then do you expect them to just be where you are today, just like that?
I was having a very good discussion with somebody who works in the government, because I was looking for something in the government and I never got it. And so I went and I ranted a lot, and I said, oh, I'm not going to come back here again. And this person says, faint-hearted never gets it. If we are going to give up, we will never make it. When you fall down, you wake up because you know you're not going to crawl and you're not going to sit there until tomorrow. You're definitely going to walk home. And for you to do that, you've got to lift yourself up. What I'm saying is, yes, we've been unfair. But even if, there's very little fairness in a government system to its people. That I can tell you for free. Mm-hmm. What the youth must know is you must speak in one voice in all corners of this country. And when you see any vice, make noise about it. When they're taking what rightfully belongs to you, make noise about it. When you make more noise, people will listen and they'll put you on the partaking table. If you don't make noise and you sit and say how many degrees you have, I can tell you years will go by so fast, and before long you'll be a drunkard in the village. I'm not saying that only, that's the only thing you can do. I'm saying that use whatever you have in your hand. Moses was just asked, what do you have in your hand? What do you have in your hand?
What is that one thing you have?
That is all I have.
All
so
right.
really use, and again, I think the youth must also know that the best way they can move from one stage to the other, one position to the other, is to have mentors. Look at people in the community that perhaps have done something. I live in a community where people hardly come to ask you, well, what can we do to get here? That to me is very important. And anybody who comes to me and says, how can I get here? I will sit down with that individual, because I know their thinking is totally different. But we're not having that much. The kids you have around are very busy in their tablet, and if anything, they don't want to engage with anybody. And that cannot take you anywhere. Make noise, have lobby groups in all the counties, and say this belongs to us. These positions and tenders you're giving people, we want to know which companies, we want to verify if these companies belong to the youth and to the disability. Then they will not take advantage of you.
Okay, Michael, well said. And of course, talking about making noise and being present, I'd just like to urge the young people to be present in this conversation. Read the BBI report. Some of the proposals contained in there include the fact that there's a proposal to give youth-owned enterprises a 7-year tax break and to establish business incubation centers across the country for purposes of giving advisory services when it comes to business management to the young people. Also talking about the Higher Education Loans Board Act. There's going to be an amendment to the Act to give loanees a grace period of 4 years from the date of completion of their studies before they can commence repayment of loans advanced to them. And I can go on and on about some of the issues that are contained in the BBI report that touch on the youth agenda. So read it and find out, does it meet your interest as a young person going forward? As the conversation about the BBI report continues in the country, I've been hosting Michael Agwanda, a political analyst. Your final words as we bring this to a close, Michael.
I only pray that Kenyans will come to a realization it's a little too late to bring a contestation on the BBI. I can only say that if indeed you had an issue to bring up and you're in the government, you should have done it when BBI committee was still collecting information. My prayer as I finish this is let the people that will change, will ascend to leadership in 2022 not go there because they're the ones who formulated the BBI and all those positions because they think it is their right, but that they will be in those positions to serve Kenyans and to bring the elusive unity and end the cycles of violence every 5 years. Kenyans are tired of this. We don't want to see it in 2022, neither will we want to see it in 2027. We want a situation that can have a bit of normalcy in every election so that this country can grow economically. I also pray that the people who will elect, in our political arena will not be based on parties, will not be based on who says this is the right person, but will be based on people that have tangible evidence of development, track record within them, but also people of integrity, because this is where we have a problem. Now we are saying that, we are not going to support this BBI because some politicians are telling us. We are not giving them an opportunity to tell us exactly what is in the BBI, because some of those leaders themselves and elected leaders do not know. How I wish that the narrative will change, that when you go to tell people that vote BBI, that you will tell them why they need to vote for BBI.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Michael Agwanda, and of course just sharing your insights on the BBI report and the conversation that is taking shape in the country. At the Naivasha meeting, one of the issues that culminated that meeting was the fact that they unveiled a roadmap for the BBI campaign. Going forward, you're going to witness a lot of activities as the BBI caravan continues to move. And right here, as KBC Channel 1, we will be picking that conversation as that caravan moves across the country, just to help you understand the twists and turns of the journey to the adoption of the BBI report in the country. My name is Serfine Achieng Ouma. Our sign language interpreter is Lucy Mwaura, of course assisted earlier by Byron Abuli. We are now paving way for the Swahili version of the program Tamrini. Nancy Okware will be taking you through that, so stay with us.